Until 2009, when Boko Haram took a dangerous turn that would later give birth to the insurgency in the northeastern part of the country, Nigeria only had to contend with social insecurity that gave rise to armed robbery, kidnapping, ethnic and religious intolerance, and the unrest in the Niger Delta region. Even these posed a major challenge for government at that time. But the addition of terrorism and insurgency has not only worsened the security situation in the country, it is also threatening the very existence of Nigeria as a nation. Since 2009, the insurgent group Boko Haram has killed more than 5,000 civilians in attacks occurring mainly in the northeast, north central, and occasional attacks and bombings of soft targets like schools, shopping malls and motor parks in Abuja. The group, which seeks to Islamize Nigeria, has also abducted more than 500 people, including the over 200 Chibok schoolgirls. Over 1 million people have been displaced in the worst affected states of Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa. Apart from the senseless killing of innocent civilians, Boko Haram has also dislocated people, including entire communities, and severely damaged the economy of the northeast.
It's a sad thing to be talking about internally displaced person. Nobody is happy that you will be displaced within your own land. Of course, we know that the issue of terror is global, but the excess of Boko Haram is quite traumatic for all of us. I know that my good friend, the governor of Borno State, some nights he will not sleep. Because when I was a governor, I had some tough time too in the Niger Delta at the peak of militancy. And it's never an easy job to manage. As a president, I feel traumatized whenever I hear about these excesses. I feel very burdened. But let me reassure all Nigerians and indeed the internally displaced person that government is working very hard to make sure that you don't stay in these camps for too long.
Among the many social ills inherited by the Goodluck Jonathan administration, Boko Haram insurgency remains the single most daunting. It also poses the biggest threat to Nigeria's internal cohesion. With some of Nigeria's territory firmly under the control of Boko Haram, the group also poses the biggest threat to the country's territorial integrity.
The upsurge in incidents of terrorism has shifted the focus of the general public to the armed forces, and particularly the Nigerian army. Our activities are increasingly coming under public scrutiny. It is our duty, therefore, to pick up the gauntlet, rededicate ourselves, and prove our critics wrong. This we can do only if we pause to reflect on what we are doing right and take steps to correct what we are not doing well in order to chart a better course for the future of the Nigerian army and indeed the Nigerian nation at large.
The problem of insurgency in Nigeria predates Goodluck Jonathan's presidency, but as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, the President knew that the buck stopped at his table, and he has not failed to explore all possible avenues to remedy the situation.
Our commitment is for a regional approach, because without the countries in West Africa and Central Africa coming together, we will not be able to crush these terrorists. Boko Haram is no longer the local terror group with some religious sentiment that started in Nigeria in 2002 to 2009. In fact, from 2002 to 2004, from 2009 to date, it has changed and is operating clearly as an Al-Qaeda organization, can better be described as Al-Qaeda in West and Central Africa.
The Nigerian Constitution, in its section 217, subsections 1 and 2, prescribe the responsibilities of the military as follows. There shall be an armed forces for the Federation, which shall consist of the Army, Navy and Air Force, and such other branches of the armed forces of the Federation as may be established by an act of the National Assembly. The said body as constituted shall be for the purpose of defending Nigeria from internal aggression, maintaining its territorial integrity, and securing its borders from violation on land, sea, or air, suppressing insurrection and acting in aid of civil authorities to restore order when called upon to do so by the President, but subject to such conditions as may be prescribed by an act of the National Assembly. The direct interpretation of the Nigerian Army Act is that the President can, as duty calls, dispatch the army for a specific duty or function. The Constitution in Section 130, subsection 1, also confers on the President, the Chief Executive of the Federation, and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation the powers to maintain order and defend Nigerians through the armed forces. Relying on these constitutional provisions, President Jonathan deployed troops to the northeast region after very wide consultations with major stakeholders in the Nigeria project, including civil society organizations.
As a people, we should rally behind and give our president whatever he asks for in order to win this war. If that being state of emergency, we should give it to him.
In the last 4 years, the Jonathan administration has continually increased budgetary allocations to the defense sector to give the forces fighting insurgency the needed bite.
The federal government is trying to re-equip the military in view of the present challenges. You recall that Mr. President only recently sent a request asking for $1 billion to assist in equipping the military. And I think the government, while also trying to formulate policies and drawing up the budget for 2015, should intensify, increase allocations for our defense security forces.
As a way of ensuring that every step taken by government in the fight against Boko Haram is a step in the right direction, President Jonathan set up the Presidential Committee on Security Challenges in the Northeast Zone to further widen the consultations process.
After extensive and intensive consultations with all stakeholders, including opinion leaders, traditional rulers, leaders in public and private sectors, religious organizations, youth and women groups, NGOs, and constituted authorities, Northern Elder Council abhors and rejects now and always all forms of and manner of intimidation, provocation, threat, and violence.
President Jonathan also set up 2 other committees to boost his administration's multi-pronged approach to solving the problem of insurgency. On the advice of stakeholders in the country, the federal government offered amnesty as well as the opportunity to dialogue to the insurgents group to no avail. This left the government no choice but to strengthen its military approach to resolving the problem. It must be understood that the military, primarily trained in conventional warfare, is now faced with an unconventional threat where the enemy is not organized and its threats are asymmetrical. In fighting terrorism and insurgency, the troops had to contend with equipment and trainings received for conventional warfare. Intent and resolute on ending the Boko Haram insurgency, the Jonathan administration quickly undertook the following measures: organization of special counter-terrorist training for several units in the army, acquisition of state-of-the-art weapons and equipment, update of existing weapons and equipment in the armed forces inventory, ensuring regional cooperation with neighboring countries for intelligence sharing and joint operations, strategic partnerships with global community against terrorism, and putting in place mechanism for prevention of terrorism through the Countering Violent Extremism program. Troops, bolstered by the support of the federal government, have been able to recapture communities in the three most affected states from the Boko Haram sect.
The military has not and will not concede any part of this country's territory to terrorists who are already marauding in some parts. Appropriate plans, including the mobilization of men, resources, equipment of all sorts, are presently being mobilized to address the situation. I want to assure Nigerians that the territory of Nigeria will be protected at all costs.
No doubt, the Boko Haram insurgency has presented itself as one of the biggest security challenges in the nation since the Nigerian Civil War.
We have always condemned the happenings, the activities of the insurgents at every level. We continue to condemn such activities of such insurgents until there is no more insurgency in the world. Nigeria is just part of the global world, and we are going through our own challenges. We must see these challenges as what will push us to come out as greater than we've ever been in our 100-year history.
Borno State has been the worst hit by the insurgency. Of the 27 local government areas in the state, 10 are seriously affected by the activities of the sect. These include Abadam, Bama, Dikwa, Goza, Kalabaj, Kukawa, Mafa, Mate, Moba and Ngala. Many areas in these local governments are currently occupied by members of the sect. According to the federal government's assessment of ongoing operations, most, if not all, of the occupied territories will be recovered before the general election. With areas like the Maiduguri Metropolitan Council, Jere, Kwayarkusa, Bayo and Shani local government areas now relatively peaceful, it is expected that heightened security operations in the most affected local government areas will reduce the security concerns in the remaining parts before the elections. Security operations are now being perfected to give the forces the capacity to stabilize a great part of Borno State. Before now, the insurgents had taken control of 5 local government areas in Adamawa State, namely Madagali, Michika, Mubi North, Mubi South, and Meha. However, extensive security operations between November 2014 and January 2015 have confined the insurgents to only Madagali, and even that is already within the sights of the security forces. It is projected that before the general election, the insurgents will have been completely pushed out of Adamawa State. Such operations are expected to create a backlash on Borno State, where it is believed to be the original base of the insurgents. Effective control measures have been put in place by the Jonathan administration to ensure that they are channeled only to specific areas where it will be easier for the security forces to deal a decisive blow. The security situation in Yobe State is not as worrisome as in Adamawa and Borno states. Out of 17 local governments, only 2 have been the center of activities for the insurgents. They are Gujba and Gulani local government areas. Understandably, these 2 local government areas are located on the route linking the state with the Sambisa and Balmo forests, which are bases for the insurgents. The insurgents have made attempts at several city centers like Damaturu from these bases and have been severally successfully repelled. Again, on February 1, 2015, Boko Haram insurgents attacked Maiduguri, Borno State capital, from 4 axes. This was just about 1 week after a similar attack on the Borno State capital. These spate of attacks is seen as desperation by the sect, as the capture of Maiduguri town will offer the group a psychological boost. However, the security forces are well aware of this and are sparing no efforts to prevent any imminent attack from the sect. Boko Haram is also under serious pressure due to the capacity of the security forces as well as the military incursion of troops from neighboring countries along the border areas, which has led to the successful capture of several border towns, including Malam Faturi, Abadam on the Niger axis, and Baga, Gamburu, and Banki.
People have always maintained, the world over, it's been maintained that the Nigerian military remains one of the best in the world. And I'm not surprised with the successes recorded so far. With more funding, more encouragement from government, I think our military is equal to the task by dealing with this insurgency. With time, and I guess with time, with support of elders, you see, recall the last meeting of the Council of State, where the former heads of state reiterated and promised to assist Mr. President to ensure that this war comes to an end. And I do believe that our military will perform that feat.
It is anticipated that security operations in Borno State may create ripple effects on communities in this area. Therefore, security forces have initiated measures to prevent such occurrence. If the plans by security forces are actualized, the two local government areas in Yobe will be liberated before the elections, as the threat of the insurgents there is not as formidable as in Adamawa and Borno states. Over the centuries, insurgents have prevailed only because of the intervention of outside forces. But historical records also show that most insurgent groups never get very far. Insurgents like the Boko Haram group are not organized into regular formations, and this makes it difficult to accurately assess their numerical strength and weaponry. As a matter of fact, there are no front lines whose location could offer insight into the progress of the war, and at any rate, military factors are usually less important than political and psychological considerations in deciding the outcome of such conflicts.
It's either the government declares a total emergency where you put in the military structure and say you give them timeline, 1 month, 2 months, you are going to deploy, I think, maybe 5,000 military officers each into each state, 5,000, 15,000. I bet you in the next 1 month we'll get result. But if you're, the consequence approach that I said is that there's political wrangling. Everything, every decision that is taken is seen from political and political accusation, and people are ready to sabotage these other persons and then this one is accusing these other persons. That is not very right, and that is what insurgent groups, terrorist gangs, seek out to achieve.
But in all sincerity, the fight against insurgency is a slow and grinding process. There have been setbacks and losses in the process, but the gains have been numerous and encouraging. The improved capacity and support given by government will surely embolden the troops to achieve better results. The rising morale of the troops will in no small measure help to catalyze them to capture more lost territories.
It is important to remind all those who are adept at spewing falsehood or exaggerating situations with a view to emboldening the terrorists and make efforts to diminish the efforts of the Nigerian military. The tendency to celebrate the occasional setbacks in the course of this operation while zealously downplaying the efforts and successes of the mission to contain the terrorists is unfair and very unfortunate.
We are going to win this war if we stop bickering over ethnicity, if we stop bickering over religion, and take this matter seriously. First of all, there must be jointness in our military. There must be jointness with our foreign partners, in this particular case, Cameroon, Niger, and Chad. You close all the borders. And then the disappointing aspect is that the so-called observation by the international community using their satellite, they have failed to share what they see with Nigeria. And that is where my concern is.
Globally, it takes time and resources to win the war against terrorism and its twin brother insurgency. The Jonathan administration has continued to tread cautiously but steadily in the prosecution of the war to avoid or at least minimize civilian casualties or collateral damage.
The Nigerian army is performing, and I also know the expectation of the Nigerian citizen, but the expectation is rather too in a haste. We need some time. We need patience. We are fighting terrorism. We are not fighting a conventional war. Nigerian army is a conventional and regular army. We are also now fighting terrorism. The terrorist is someone you don't know. Maybe someone who sold food to you or sold fruit to you in the morning. By the afternoon, he is a terrorist. By the evening, he is a terrorist. Now we are having all that in an interplay in the battlefronts in the northeast. We have to be cautious to separate the terrorists from the law-abiding citizen. We also have the human rights to protect, because you just don't go out and start killing people that they are terrorists. Some of them are also innocent Nigerians. We are bound by all the international treaties of the human rights. Therefore, we need time.
For now, the Boko Haram insurgency remains complex, dynamic, and the degree to which it has penetrated territories in the northeast and even public and private lives makes it a war that can only be won via effective tactical management by government. This is what the administration has been doing so far.
Nigeria knows too well the destructive effects of terrorist activities. Over the past 5 years, we have been and are still confronting threats posed by Boko Haram to peace and stability, predominantly in the northeastern part of our country. The costs are high. Thousands of innocent people have been killed, whole communities razed, and hundreds of persons kidnapped. The most prominent being the mindless kidnap of innocent daughters from Chibok Secondary School in Borno State, northeast Nigeria. Mr. President, as daunting as the challenge may be, we have faced it with unrelenting determination, mobilizing all the resources at our disposal to ensure that the scourge of terrorism is rooted out of our nation. In addition to our counter-terrorism efforts, we have evolved initiatives to alleviate the plight of the population in the affected communities.
Most importantly, President Jonathan has initiated reforms to help demilitarize the Nigerian society and reduce the heavy influx of arms and ammunition in the country, which have unfortunately gone into the wrong hands. Here, the government needs the cooperation and support of all citizens to check the activities of terrorists, who are after all human and live among people.
Boko Haram has perpetrated more heinous, barbaric acts than any other known terrorist group. There is no doubt that foreign fighters have added a troubling dimension to this emerging phase of terrorism. From targeted attacks by Al-Qaeda a few years ago, we now have mobile bands of thousands of terrorists sweeping across vast areas, destroying lives, and even attempting to hold territory. This is unacceptable. We must act now. We must now capitalize on the commitment and evident determination of the Security Council to seek more innovative responses to the threat of terrorism, and in particular to the growing menace of foreign fighters. The Council should be concerned about the existence of sources of arming and funding terrorism. Evidence has shown that Boko Haram, for instance, is resourced largely from outside our country.
I know the expectation of the Nigerian citizen is that this thing should have been over by yesterday. But the reality is that it wouldn't have been over by yesterday because of the structure and the dynamics of fighting this type of terrorism. Now we are fighting Nigerian citizens. We are not fighting foreigners. So caution must be exercised. And I appeal that we will certainly surmount it. But we also need that support from the nation, from all the segments of the nation, societies of the nation, and from the people, including the media. And we need that patience, we need time.
President Jonathan has avowedly pushed for peace to reign supreme among the faiths and different ethnic groups that make up Nigeria. Hence the seemingly slow but steady onslaught against Boko Haram insurgency, which is only but a passing phase. Soon, and very soon too, it shall be conquered.